What's up, guys? Welcome to Operation B, the podcast. I am your host, Jamie Thurber, and I am here to take you on a journey of deepening, of expansion, of understanding more about who you are and why you're here and how to operate in an optimal way that allows you to do what you want to do, feel how you want to feel, take care of yourself truly, and support everything that your heart desires. Hey guys, welcome back to an episode of Operation B. I'm Jamie Thurber, your host, and today I am bringing to you someone who has been a massive part of my journey. I've mentioned her to you no shortage of 1,000 times. So we're lucky enough to have Amber Kerby come in, who has been a therapist and coach to me for close to 7 years. 7 years.
Ooh.
I know, it's crazy. It feels like... Gosh, in some instances, Amber, it feels like I've never done life without you.
Mm-hmm.
And in other instances, it feels like it's been just a smidge of time.
Yes. I think it's just been a couple lifetimes in those 7 years.
Seriously. Drastically different lifetimes. That is true. So something that I was thinking when I was preparing for this was you have a very cool approach to therapy. You have lots of different ways that you help people. So I figured it would be best for me to let you say that versus me mess up the processes and what you have. I was like, nope, I'm going to butcher that. We're going to let her tell you.
Yeah, that's fair. I make people introduce themselves too. So just for that very reason that I don't get it wrong. So I really appreciate that. But yeah, so I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. But the company I've created is called Non-Ordinary Therapy. And it's called that for a really good reason. My favorite approach is to utilize internal family systems model. And that's quite non-ordinary compared to a lot of the approaches that are used in therapy. And I also practice with ketamine-assisted therapy and work a lot with integration, therapeutic integration of non-ordinary states, which could be coming from psychedelic use, breath work, even near-death experiences. So it feels very unique in the way that the way that I work and the clients that I see, we're not necessarily just digging into how my thoughts are impacting my behaviors and my emotions, but going that next level deeper and really trying to understand more about who we are as humans, how to infuse more compassion for ourselves and for others, and to flow into the world in just a different way.
I love that. And what's so funny is when I first met you, I didn't know a lot of those things. You guys, this was definitely a universe thing. I was in the middle of a cosmic shift in my life that I had no choice in, I think is what I like to say. And I desperately looked for someone who was near me at the time when I was in Iowa and understood relationship coaching and relationship therapy. And so I found you, and and I'll never forget. I think one of the most impactful and mind-bogglingly changing items was one of the first times I was with you in person in your office, and you have those feeling cards.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't know how to explain to you what I'm feeling. I'm overwhelmed. And you're like, okay, well, take these cards and go through them. And if any feeling that you're feeling right now, or you feel like you can relate to in this moment, put it on the table, like on a coffee table, guys. So picture this coffee table, and I covered it in cards.
Yes.
And you're like, well, now do you understand why you feel overwhelmed? I was like, oh my God, okay. This makes so much more sense. And that was one of the biggest, and you were the first therapist I've ever seen, actually.
Wow.
I don't know if we ever talked about that. So I had worked with coaches many times in different capacities for different things. But to sit is not that I believed in therapy. I just hadn't found somebody. And so in that day, I was like, okay, there's something definitely needed for me here, even with my life like in shambles at the moment.
Yeah.
It was a look at the approach of what was going on inside of my feelings that I was not always great at anyways. And so that I knew I was like, okay, I need this support.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I know you and I have had conversations about this, how unfortunately a lot of people give up when it comes to working with a mental health professional, whether it's therapy, coaching, a psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever, because not everybody is created equal. Not everybody's right for you either.
Yes.
And so I always just want to encourage people to keep looking and keep trying, not to give up if they've had one
Mhm.
not so great experience.
Absolutely. There's so many practitioners out there trained in all kinds of different models. And then we have the unique personalities as a client and as a therapist. So it really is essential that, people still continue to give things a try. Like, okay, it may not be that person, it may not be that modality for me, but just like you experience, there will be that moment where you sit with someone and you think, okay, this is it for me. This resonates. This feels exactly where I am and is going to be
Mhm.
helpful for where I want to go moving forward. And even in that, I mean, we are pretty lucky, good Lord, 7 years
I know.
to still continue kind of doing our work as your life evolves, as my work evolves. But there are people that I'll do just shorter term work with. That
Mhm.
they're looking for something specific. They're trying to really practice the specific model and get things, under their belt. And then, sure, yeah, I'll see you for 3 months. Go out into the world, do the things, and then contact me if you need additional support. So I think, therapy isn't a life sentence either. We can really flow in and out with different practitioners and different models and get a feel for, what's really going to work for us or what's not going to work for us in the present moment.
Yeah, I think that's true, 100%. I feel like if the unique piece of both of us is that we have a vast knowledge, and so we're able to help in a lot of different ways in a lot of different areas. So like me
Uh-huh.
with my clients, and then you with your clients and with me. And so because of that, I think that's why our relationship has lasted as long as it has, is because as I've gone through all of these different waves of my life over the past 7 years, which it's been necessary for me to have somebody that understands. And I remember when I left Iowa, me saying, "Okay, what I can't do this with someone else." Like it was just such a drastic thing that occurred there. Um, I'll never forget recently when Anthony was in the hospital and he
Yeah.
sent me a picture. And I told you, like,
Oh,
I haven't talked to this guy in forever. And I get a picture of him in the hospital. And I like flash back to him being in the hospital when I was in Iowa. And you were like, oh my
yes.
God, I could kill him for that. It's like, yes, you get it.
And yet, like, to give you so much credit, how much work you've done in order to be with that image and be with how your body reacted and what came up for you, also highlighted the
Yeah, thanks.
incredible, like, path that you've been on to really get to know who you are, get to know what you want in life and what you don't want in life.
Yes, that's been a big piece too. I remember learning about coming back to St. Louis and getting to pick up, like, there's certain things that people say to me that stick with me long term. And I still think about the analogy you gave me of, it's like you, when you left, you pruned this tree or pruned this situation, all of these codependent relationships you had, and now you get
Yeah.
to choose which ones you pick back up and what they look like. And I
Yes.
still think of that when
Mm.
I catch myself feeling obligated to interact or
Yes.
respond or show up for something. And I think to
Mhm.
myself, wait, is that something you really want to go back to or try again with? And it's the cool, you've allowed me to create this acceptance in the fact that I don't have to do any of those things. That doesn't take away from what that relationship may have
Mhm.
been at whatever time it was. Like there are plenty of people, and you could probably name them all, that I don't talk to ever really anymore, but I have no like bad feelings towards them. It doesn't take away from my love for them. It's just it was no longer lucrative or supportive for where I was at. And if I would have kept trying, it would have turned
Yes.
into this like hard line cut, never talk to again, cement the door shut kind of thing.
Yes. Yes. Huge difference between cutoff and
Mhm.
that compassionate choice, like for ourselves and for that other person. Just knowing, wow, being with that person will bring up this for me and this for them. Is this really what I'm doing? Is this actually something that's going to get me closer to where I want to be? Or is this just a distraction? Is this, just easier to go back? Yeah, so really, focusing on how much work it takes at first to really tune in to knowing whether or not you want to re-engage with someone and what you really want that relationship to look like, and being able to give it a shot, or being able to say, yeah, we're going to table that for now.
And I hope anybody listening recognizes, like, yeah, that may sound easy and
Mm,
you know it's not. And no, it isn't
mm,
easy.
right.
But accepting that I have the control to decide who I interact with and who I don't, or how I interact with them has been, well, yeah, it's not simple by any means. It is, once you realize it really is a choice.
Hmm.
Um, I think practicing my presencing that we do and the presencing I work on
Yes.
helps me with that. Like if I let myself get too caught up in the busyness, I don't do the same thing. So I feel like
Hmm.
that's a big key that a lot of people, when it comes to shifting things in your life, overlook. I talk about it all the time, and I know people are like, yeah, okay, I know I should, breathe and meditate or be in the room. And it's like, man,
Hmm.
I couldn't have the weight that's been lifted off of my shoulders in the past year, especially,
Hmm. Yeah.
would have never happened if I wasn't able to be in the spaces and actually be in them versus going through the motions.
Yes, huge difference between reacting and responding. So when we're just kind of unconsciously moving throughout the program, the relationships, our lives,
Yeah.
we're just going to react. We're not actually making the choices. When we're slowing it down, and that's the hardest and easiest part of it, right? Once we slow
Hmm.
down, it's really easy to tune in and say, wow, okay, this is how I want to respond. This is what I really want to do. This is how this is going to flow. And yet we live in a culture that doesn't hold a lot of time and space for slowing down, for
Yeah.
presence, for actually tuning in and understanding who I am. What is my intuition like? What is it that I'm really looking for? What the heck are boundaries? How do I initiate those in a way that serves me and serves the people around me? So it
Hmm.
really does hinge, so much of my work hinges on this concept of being. And in order to be, we need to slow down. It's not about doing. It's
Hmm.
not about feeling. It's about taking it down a couple notches. Can I actually breathe? When I'm eating lunch, am I just eating lunch? When I'm hanging out with people, am I really just hanging out with people?
Yeah. It's so funny as you're talking, I'm thinking of all these like analogies that I live by that you've given me. Um, you say boundaries, and I think of saying that person just jumped the fence into your backyard. You do not have to let them stay there. And I'm like
Mhm.
visual that I'll never forget ever.
Yes.
So I'm like, wait a minute, this person just jumped in my backyard. I did
Yeah.
not invite you in here. Like
Right?
that's
Yes.
one. Um, that's a game changer. I'm like saying these, I'm thinking like somebody else, please put this in your brain because it works.
Yes.
Um, and talking about, and you mentioned it at the beginning, so talking about internal family systems, the
Hmm.
IFS is what it's abbreviated for, guys. And I
Yeah.
think the biggest piece of that for me has been I would already go into meditation or like visualization things very on a spiritual side. I was doing it for a very spiritual reason, not for a therapeutic management of self, learning self reason.
Yes.
But the most important, I'll never forget one of the most impactful
Mhm.
times we did that practice. I was in my car in a parking lot
Yes.
at like the grocery store. And I was
Yep.
like, I don't, and you were like, wow, I'm surprised how quickly you dropped in. I was like, apparently I needed to.
Yeah.
But the no bad parts piece, I would like
Mhm.
you to put your amber words to
Yeah.
that because the amount of pressure that's relieved from my life is
Mhm.
massive.
Yes. Yeah. So maybe even taking a step back and
Yeah.
explaining a bit about the context of IFS. Internal family systems is really a model that honors the multiplicity of self, not in a pathological way, yet in this way that how we show up for work is different than how we show up with our friends, is often different than how we show up with family. So there are these aspects of who we are that tends to come out during different times, different spaces, making different choices, and yet it's still all you. So, when it comes to this idea of no bad parts, what that allows us to do is to tap in a little bit more compassionately. So if we've got a critic And I have yet to meet anyone who doesn't have some sort of internal critic going on, probably constantly. Initially, the way that we see that critic is usually pretty uptight. It's a part that we're like, gosh, I wish that would just be quiet. I don't want that internal like critic happening all the time. And when we could get a little bit more curious and slow down and really tap into this idea of like, okay, this is here for a reason. What's going on with this? We begin to notice more of the gifts and the wisdom that these parts bring to us.
Mhm.
So even if they're doing something for us that doesn't always feel great and we're seeing like the impact of this is not awesome, the
Mhm.
reason why it's there is usually out of the goodness of what's happening. That critic for most of us is trying to help. Even though it's using words and using a tone that is not always the most comfortable, it's really trying to get our attention. It's trying to get us to slow down. It's trying to say, hey, this could be really dangerous if you show up imperfectly, if you say that thing. And now that you said that thing, let's critique it and make sure that we do it better next time. So this idea of no bad parts really says there's a gift to every part of us, even if it doesn't feel like a gift initially. And
Mhm.
so when we soften into that and have more compassion for ourselves, that of course is going to flow out into the world. We have more compassion for other people that we bump into when we say, wow, that was intense. Okay. Now, if I can be compassionate about that, that person is doing that also for a reason. They've got a
Mhm.
part of them that's trying to be protective in some way or another. You know, maybe they had a wound that was bumped in this, and so now they're defending it. Oh, okay, I get that.
Mhm.
Not in a way that gives them this, huge permission to be the way that they are, and yet at the same time, there's that softness towards another person to say, okay, yeah, you're human. You've got some parts up. I've got some parts up. And we're really just trying to do the best that we can to stay protected and stay okay in these situations.
It's like like a mind blowing
Mm-hmm.
because I would didn't real it was really cool for me guys that know about my physical health situation. So the cool piece of IFS for me with my health was recognizing which parts of me were created because they didn't know what else to do. Like my system
Yes.
didn't know what else to do. So we have one that we lovingly call the drill sergeant.
Yes.
And she has a specific reason. And so
Yes.
it's been interesting because, also, like, I did not intentionally wind up in this spot at the studio, right? At the production company.
Mm-hmm.
And, but what's happened, and it's something that, I mean, granted, do I need your and Jesse's permission to do things? Jesse being my coach, guys. Like, no, I do not. Is it nice though when I have two individuals who know my patterns and know me so well that they can say, okay, yeah, and this is a great opportunity for you to let the drill sergeant do what she needs to do in places where it's healthy.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
funny how when I'm like actively seeing like these versions of myself and letting them do their thing and the ease that it's created. And I don't even know if I've told you this to this extent yet, Amber, but the thing that I've noticed is that the pressure that the right now version of Jamie feels is much less. So
Yes.
me being able to say, wow, I need to just sit here because that was a lot of doing.
Yes.
And the doing part is so satisfied that she's not over
Mhm.
here going, why are you just sitting there? You shouldn't just be sitting there.
Yes.
You should be doing something. Instead, she's like, wow, I feel so good about all
Yes.
those boxes I just checked.
Mhm.
And in being able to I used to look at that as if she wasn't running the show, I was doing something wrong.
Mhm.
Um, but understanding that that was created to keep me in what I felt was safe
Yes.
was really cool because I've heard people talk about this in a lot of different ways. So if we take this to a psychedelic type of therapy piece, like I remember years and years ago, before I met you even, my friend Greg, who we've talked a lot about,
Mhm.
Greg Anderson, him and I were talking about ayahuasca because he had gone on like a true walkabout in the jungle
That's
and,
intense.
done his thing for years. He only ate fruit for like,
Mhm.
I don't know, a year. It's wild. He's done wild things. God love him for that. but he's brought me bits and pieces of knowledge at interesting parts of my life. And I remember us talking about ayahuasca and him explaining to me that about the neural pathways that are created
Yes.
once we're not a baby anymore, basically. Like you touch that, it's hot. So there's a pathway created
Yeah.
that's hot. That's now a rule. And then every bad thing that ever happens, or even not even bad, like anything that
Anything.
happens, we create these pathways. And
Mhm.
I remember learning about that and him telling me, he was like, and the scary, or not scary part, but the uncontrollable part of those types of practices is that you don't know which ones you're going to burst open and which ones you aren't.
Yes.
So when you come back from that, if you don't have therapy or somebody to help with integration,
Mhm.
then it's can be devastating. And I
Yes.
remembered being with the guys who did the Lions Not Sheep experiences. They would go and they would go for 4 days and get ripped apart and tore down to
Yes.
the bare rawness of themselves. And then they would get sent home.
Yes.
And many of them, I ended up coaching because they were broken at home and didn't know what to do, but they weren't sent
Mhm.
home with integration.
Right.
And so that's the part that I love about you. And it's you and your husband do a lot of this together.
Yes.
Um, and so is that you do incorporate the integration piece. Now, I have not done those therapies with her. Do I think I will at some point? Yes. Do I think I'm not prepared for it just yet? Absolutely. Um, so I'd like you to explain a little bit more about how what you do has a little more control over what you're opening, and then you have a follow-up approach.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So right now, when it comes to non-ordinary states, there's a couple legal routes and quite a few
Mhm.
underground routes
Sure.
in the states. And being in Iowa, the legal route for me is to work with ketamine in order to induce these non-ordinary states and really access, what you're talking about is implicit memories. It's more of that unconscious. It's how
Mm.
we're learning how to be. And so when we can bring awareness and consciousness to those implicit memories, we can also invite in some shifts and some change, which is, a beautiful combination with IFS. IFS
Mhm.
as a standalone does pretty much the same thing. We're tapping into, what's really buried in our system. What have we exiled? What have we pushed away? What kind of wounds are we just ignoring? And how do we integrate that? How do we bring all of these parts in to the same team? Because this is my existence here. This is my humanity here. Um, so to pair that with ketamine, one of the things I really focus on is using lower to moderate doses. And this slows the process down. It can be very beneficial for us to go into high doses, for us to, go into these big experiences, have mystical experiences. It can really shake up the snow globe and allow us to create some new patterns, especially if we have support. So that kind of speaks to what you were seeing with your community, how people, yeah, everything would be shaken up and then they come back home and we're not set up as a culture to integrate, to really
Mhm.
understand it, to hold it loosely, to allow people to kind of lay down some new patterns. So our tendency is to try to go back to the old patterns, but then none of that fits. And so it creates a lot of cognitive dissonance and we're just very uncomfortable in our body, in our life. So to be able to use ketamine within a therapeutic context, we're slowing the whole process down. People remain in a state where they know that things are different and they can invite in new perspectives, they can reprocess some memories and some emotions. And yet at the same time, if the fire alarm went off in my building,
Mhm.
that would be a little funky, I think, in an experience, but we can get outside, we can get to safety. People are still aware that they are here in my office, while their awareness is also incredibly shifted with this type of modality. And so to wrap integration around that, to wrap, therapeutic support around that, as people get these insights, as they realize like, oh, I want to lay down something different. Great. We can do that. We can do that
Mhm.
slowly. We can do that intentionally. And you can have that support and that accountability because it turns out a lot of us have these grand plans about things and then don't want to follow through until we've got an accountability partner, someone's asking about it. It's a good reminder. So that's part of integration as well, is just really holding people to the goals, to the behaviors, to the thought processes, to the, relationships that they're continuing to say, I know that this is right for me. This is true for me. This is exactly where I need to be. And sometimes we just need someone to put up some guardrails to say like, okay, well, here's the path then, and we'll keep these guardrails up so that you don't deviate too far.
Yeah, okay, that's a great explanation. I love
Yeah.
that. So I think a lot of people don't understand too. Can you explain just a smidge about how specifically with what you're doing, it's around a lot, and correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like a lot of people seek that when they have PTSD or like intense
Mhm.
traumas that they're having a really hard time getting to the surface of or getting past.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, we're seeing a lot of that, above ground and underground. I mean, we're seeing a lot in research about PTSD, treatment-resistant depression, OCD, substance use,
Mhm.
eating disorders. I mean, when it comes to these really deeply sticky, ingrained patterns that people say, I've tried the medications, I've tried all the therapies, this isn't working. I haven't found something sustainable. I'm not really sure what to do yet. That, of course, prompts us to say, what else? What else? What
Right.
else could there be? And so, research is saying that these kinds of modalities are quite effective for that. And it's not just the experience that's going to create the lasting change that people are really looking for. These kinds of modalities are generally just really great tools to help get us unstuck. And then how do we keep moving down the road? So if I had a flat tire and I needed
Yeah.
someone to come help me change the tire, oh my gosh, now I've got a brand new tire. If I keep rolling on the same path that I know is riddled with nails, I'm going to keep getting flat tires and keep calling the same person. Oh my gosh, help me out again, help me out again. Versus this idea that, like, cool, my tire's fixed. I know that road is not a great road for this vehicle. Choose a different road. There are so many other paths. I am going to have to make changes. And that, I think, is one of the hardest parts, especially when it comes to kind of the sexiness of psychedelics and how healing they are and how magical this can be. Absolutely. And also, it will stay just an experience if we're not continuing to do the work. If we
Mhm.
have the aha moments that say, like, oh, holy crap, I really need to do this in my life. We need to do the thing in order to
Mhm.
continue down that path versus doing what a lot of us do. Like, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. I'll get to that at some point. That
Yeah.
sounds too hard. I actually don't know that I want to do that. That'll create a lot of havoc in my life. That'll create a lot of change.
Which is might be what we're looking for,
Exactly.
right?
Yes, it's unfamiliar, it's uncomfortable, and it's supposed to because we
Yeah.
know that we can't always create a new solution in the same environment that created the problem. It's time to make a shift.
Yeah, that's huge. It's funny how and we've talked about this to an extent a time or two, is that it always really will come down to what in any situation I've noticed,
Mhm.
an awareness and
Yes.
then an action. Like we
Yes.
have to do the work. And so when I
Mhm.
tell people about my experiences with my coaches and my little team of people that help me through the shit, basically, I tell them I have been very blessed to find you and Dr. Brog and Jesse and Joe, and like
Yeah.
it's been great. And I have Tony, who's an incredible asset and partner.
Yes.
And
Yes.
part of why I have a great experience is because I'm open.
Mhm.
I and again, guys, I'm not like I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm sharing this to like let people be aware. Like you could have this too. Part of it is you have to be willing to show up,
Mhm.
tell the say the uncomfortable things, say the like catching yourself, ask questions, do the work, like ask for homework, those kinds of things. It makes me giggle when people say, well, I just didn't go to therapy anymore. I didn't have anything else to talk about. And I'm like,
Mhm.
really? Okay. But there's a piece of that puzzle where
Mhm.
it just like everything, part of being a human being, if you want your experience to be a certain way, We have to do something. And I wish I could had a magic wand and could like grant wishes for people. Um, that's just not the way it is. And so I try, this is the thing nobody ever wants to hear, right? But
Mm,
it is the truth that if you want something to change, you have to change, or you have to be willing to
mhm.
do the work to do
Yes.
that. And so with that being said, it's a piece of the puzzle that I can say all day long, right? And I thought, oh, and
Mhm.
I didn't even write it on my notes, but it popped into my head, and I'm glad it did, because it is something you and I have talked about. There are plenty of people
Mhm.
who show up, to check the box,
Yes.
but they don't really show up.
Yes. Yeah, which, from a professional point of view, that was an aspect of the way that I used to practice that
Mm,
it was really difficult. And that's also what spurred me to create this idea of like non-ordinary therapy, because I know previously in my practice it was more talk therapy based. And there's some value to that, but that's where people get stuck of like, I don't have anything else to talk about because that's what the relationship is hinged on. So
mhm,
what are we really doing and what are we offering? And so when it comes to a modality like IFS, it's less about talking and it's more about experiencing. And if
mhm.
there's not an experiential embodied component to the therapy that we're doing, you might as well just go have coffee with your friends, chat with your mom, talk to the person next to you on the plane, because being able to talk about it is an aspect, but it's not always the most vulnerable aspect. And I think there's a piece to therapy that if people are just kind of in the performative, I can talk about it, that's also not going to spur on what really needs to happen next. People aren't
Mhm,
really opening up in this way, and they're not tapping into more of those deeper aspects that is uncomfortable. And then being able to say, okay, this is what's really happening under the
mhm,
whole story. This is actually the reality of it. And what do I do with that? How do I
mhm.
sit with that? How do I feel that? And then how do I move forward knowing all of this?
Oh, yeah, like, I'm really great at intellectualizing everything.
Yeah.
I could explain to you why it happened, who someone else, and those are all
hmm
probably very accurate.
Yes.
Um, and everyone that I work with is very aware of that. Like, Jesse often is like, "So, let's talk about where you feel that in your body." And then you're like,
Yes.
"So, what about the root there? Who do you think is talking?" And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, "Oh, yeah, okay."
Uh-huh.
So it helps me though, because when we touch base every week, like, it helps me then throughout my week, I think about our conversations pop up, and in those moments, I'm able to catch myself only being here, and then I
Yep.
get to go here into
Yeah.
wherever it's showing up,
Yes.
and, typically behind the shoulder blade, that
Yes.
spot is still a hot one sometimes.
Yes.
It's definitely not as bad as it used to be, but,
hmm
it's funny because now it hurts as soon as I say it. I'm like, "Oh, that hurts. You weren't hurting before." But when we do that, because we live in a world where we have all this information at our fingertips, guys, like, it is easy to
hmm
think that you can diagnose yourself or, like, over explain the reason that you feel a certain way. And, like, some of
hmm
that I've found to be helpful to an extent. But
Yeah.
then what would happen for me is that the thing would keep showing up.
Yes.
I would get irritated, then I would get
Yes.
overwhelmed and exhausted and drained from this one thing. And so
hmm
offering this different modality to understand, well, two pieces, understand where it might be showing up in my system or who of
Yes.
my internal parts might be speaking, but also that I didn't
hmm
have to understand. Like,
hmm
if it was clear, great. But I didn't have to dig and be like, to a part of myself, you tell me why you did
Right.
that. Um,
Yeah.
being able to know that I could just accept that this was an older part of me who thought it was doing its best, which again, guys, some of you might be listening to this and think I'm crazy, and that's fine, but it works because
hmm
I just spoke to someone when I first got here into the building and they said something about, wow, you do a lot. And I was like, the other day my cousin said to me, we were sitting together and she's 20, so she's significantly younger than me. And she was like, you've lived so many different lives.
hmm
And I was like, God, I love you for noticing that. because I
Yes.
have.
Yes.
And I love that. I think it's great. And I think some people don't want to acknowledge it. Like they think there's something wrong with that. And it's like,
Mhm.
it's called experiencing, I think,
Yes, yes. And really your path is about integration too, because you're not still caught in the same program that you were in when you were 20 of
Hmm.
like, let's just empty out every well and
Hmm.
we're going to burn this down and we're going to go, go, go. It's just, it's not sustainable. It was something necessary at that time. And then as you began moving forward into life and really getting curious about like, ooh, actually, my body doesn't feel great when this is happening. What's going on here? What is this telling me? That does allow us to shift and to bring in the wisdom of those parts. You know, before when you were talking about your drill sergeant, that part is becoming more and more integrated, knowing like when she's called up, she's like, hell yes, we are getting shit done. Awesome. Rock it out. And she doesn't have to be on 24/7 anymore.
Yeah.
There are these other parts of your system that say, okay, cool, we did all the things. 10-minute break. Now we
Hmm.
need to check in with this body. Have we had some water? Do we need to sit down? Have we eaten yet today? Let's do an internal check here as well. Um, which really lends to that idea of what IFS says, about integration, about adopting the wisdom of all these parts of us. Sometimes we have parts that want to change and do something different, but most of the time, these really hardworking aspects of who we are generally just need a break. And they need
Hmm.
to know there's more parts of who we are that can like step up and be present as well. So if we're not always drill sergeant, hey, things can still get done. Someone's still paying attention to what's going on, and we can take a break as well.
Well, and talk about like a self-worth piece, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you think that you only have worth and value if you're acting this one way, which I think a lot of us
Yes.
create this in ourselves, whatever version
Yes.
of that it is.
Yes.
I did that for a really long time. It was connected to I still do it to an extent. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I've gotten exceptionally better about my value and my worth not being connected to how many things I did that day.
Yeah.
And I think for me, part of it's just been also not really caring nearly as much about what anybody thinks about how many things I
Mm-hmm.
did that day. Because
Yes.
that's what it was really attached to, was what
Yes.
someone else may have thought about what I did.
Yes.
And it's a catch 22 when you work for yourself
Mm-hmm.
and you work virtually because no one sees what you're doing or not doing. So on one side of it, you may be doing 15 times more things than normal, like not normal, but like, you know what I mean, than a lot of people do in a day. And still feeling as though it's not enough and you're not doing enough and what did you do wrong and
Mm-hmm.
blah blah blah.
Yes.
So we never know when we're in that little internal world
Mm-hmm.
what's the truth, and what's
Mm-hmm.
our fabrication of it. And so
Yes.
that's massive when we realize, okay, well, now you've connected your worth to something that's not even measurable
Yes.
to begin with. Like, says who?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And that kind of lends to the different definition of some of the parts that we talk about in IFS, how we've got these prominent protectors, we've got these managers, these parts of us that are generally seen by the outside world. And under that, we talk about exiles. And these are generally, the more wounded, sometimes feels very young because it's happening early on in life. And so these are the parts of us that are carrying those beliefs that I'm not worthy, that I'm not lovable, that I'm too much, that I'm not enough. And so out of that wounding, that's when a lot of our protective parts begin to do their jobs even more intensely and can get really out of line compared to, how the rest of the system really wants to flow. And so, in your case, being able to really hone in on the drill sergeant, the doers that are like, oh my gosh, we have to do enough so that we're good enough. And to be able to say, okay, wait, is that really true? It
Yeah.
used to be true. That's that implicit memory. That's what we were taught. That's what we absorbed. Okay, now I can offer some curiosity and some compassion to what's really happening there and begin to invite those parts to turn more towards who I am.
Hmm.
And I get to decide, is this
Hmm.
enough? Does this feel enough? Can I be worthy? Can I be okay no matter what? Like, what if it's a day that I literally just sat on the couch and crocheted all day? Um, of course I'm still worthy. Of course I'm worthy of a
Mhm.
break. I'm still a whole person. It's
Yeah.
okay that we do that. And so that's part of the integration work and just the importance of compassion for these parts of us and inviting all of these in.
Mhm. And I think for everybody to understand that it's okay that some of these seemingly to the outside world small things are
Mhm,
extremely overwhelming or complicated or confusing or
mhm.
don't feel right, like the sitting for me, and I've talked a little bit about it here on the show, but like learning to just be because I would, oh, Amber, I'm doing my journaling, I'm sitting, I'm spending time. But what I was really
Yeah.
doing, as we now know, was I was sitting because I had to,
Mhm,
because my body was like, nope, you must sit down. And my mind's like, well, we can do stuff while we're sitting. It's totally fine.
mhm. Yeah.
And so then noticing, okay, but I'm still constantly doing while I'm here.
Mhm.
Something that was always a good indicator for me. And I've actually been noticing it with the others, with my dogs. So if you remember, Mac and Bonnie would like force me to stop because they would want to sit directly on top of me. And so I
Yes.
could not do other things. I had
Yes.
to just sit. And now Mia is not a snuggly
Mhm.
girl.
Mhm.
And, I've noticed though that Frankie will just kind of do what Mac used to do, and she'll just look at me. And so I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is a good opportunity to let me move this whatever I'm doing off of my lap
Mhm.
and just be with this dog for a bit." And,
Yes.
so maybe she'll turn into a snuggler, fingers crossed. I miss my snuggly babes.
Yeah.
But that's another thing, guys. I remember when Mac died, I said to Amber, "I am not I am not willing to not process this now." I said, "I do not want this to get tucked away in some crack that then in 5 years, I'm like a broken monster because I didn't deal with my baby dog breaking my heart." And it was like, and then Bonnie, so it was just like in that
Mhm.
too, I'm like, you have to make me feel these feelings. Don't let
Yes.
me like hide them.
Yes.
Because once you learn that, and it's something that others are like, I think that's weird of you. And I said, well, now that there is an internal piece of me that really doesn't like to waste time.
Mhm. Mhm. We're
But,
efficient.
right, I like to be efficient. And so I was just also going, gosh, I've spent all this work and all this time.
Mhm.
I didn't want to not feel. And it also felt, I remember you giving me permission for this one. It also felt like a disservice to my
Yes.
dogs.
Yes.
Um, for me to not completely experience those feelings. I felt like I was doing
Mhm.
them a disservice. And so,
Yes.
um, being able to have someone who knows you and can hold you in those moments and help you just be and exist and sob uncontrollably, or whatever you need to do, be really
Yes.
mad. Like I was so mad
Yeah.
about Bonnie, especially. Like I was
Yeah.
so angry. And being told for the first time, probably in my life, that it was
Mm.
okay for me to be angry.
Yes.
Talk about, again, like I feel like if anybody takes anything away from this conversation, I want you to recognize that the majority of the things that I've pointed out are things that were gigantic rocks in a backpack that I carried with me for 20 years.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so when this would happen and I'd have these moments to talk about them, I would not always immediately, but eventually that rock would come out of the
Yes.
backpack. And so the weight and the pressure
Mhm.
has been the biggest relief for me.
Yes. Yeah, and I think too the idea about giving yourself permission, like leaning into the human experience. So many of us are like terrified to feel emotions,
Yeah.
which is kind of crazy when we think about it. Like it's an emotion, it's a feeling, it's a sensation. And what I always try to remind myself in my
Mhm.
clients is the average emotion lasts 90 seconds to 3 minutes. Sure, it can come and go in waves.
Mhm.
And 90 seconds to 3 minutes, I've done harder things for longer times. That sitting with grief and anger, and disappointment and anxiety and low mood and regrets, like really allowing your body to do what it needs to do during that time was just to feel it,
Yeah.
acknowledge it, be with it,
Mhm.
and then allow it to do what it does next, which is generally just kind of move on through. Even if it's
Mhm.
going to come back to visit, cool, we can do that. I can do this for another 90 seconds. And I think that's a big reconnection for you. This is a bridge that for those of us who live in our head most of the time and want to logic everything, like, no, I get it. I understand it. Yeah, but now we need to like do it and we need to feel it. Like up here, my brain's like, oh yeah, we can feel that until we start feeling it. And then it panics and is like, nope, we're not feeling it. Let's go do something else.
Mhm.
And really like giving permission for that reconnective. Cool. Yeah. No, emotions live in my body. They live in these sensations. It's an energy. All
Mhm.
right. I mean, am I going to walk around all day trying not to sneeze? Oh my gosh. If you need to sneeze, just sneeze. Do what your body needs to do.
Yeah.
Allow that to cycle through. It'll be intense there for a second and then it's done. We do have the
Yeah.
capacity for that. And I think capacity is another thing that constantly comes up in our conversations
Yeah.
about stretching like, okay, yeah, this is what I can do. And I can hold this. And if I do stretch out this far, here's what I need to do to kind of normalize again and
Mhm.
restabilize.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm right now, you know, just restabilizing after a month of great things, but lots of things, family in town, wedding,
Yeah.
not my wedding, my stepson's wedding, for those of you who don't know. I'm like, I'm not going to talk as though everybody's involved in our conversations, Amber, and
Right.
they know what I'm talking about. But yeah, just a whole bunch, right? And then, this week I've had a lot more grace for myself than I probably ever have, for um, needing the recalibration to come back to what's the best for me after stretching, which I was able to
Yes.
stretch, which was cool because there was a time that I was not
Yes.
able to. And so
Yes.
those are the measurements, guys. Like the measurements come down to how you hold the situation, how you recover from a situation, how
Hmm.
for me, it's like, wow, I did something after 8 o'clock outside the house.
Right.
Crazy. But those are the things.
Yeah.
So no, it's just you and I have been on a very cool journey together
Yeah.
and lots of full circle moments, which are always
Hmm.
fun when I know I'm like, oh, she knows, like she sees how big of a deal this is. Um, but something I like to ask everybody, because I don't bring anybody on the show I haven't brought anybody on the show, I guess, that I know doesn't have some sort of practice around this. And so I'd like to know for you, especially because you also have a
Hmm.
family, you have a daughter,
Yep.
and she is way older than my brain thinks she is now, but crazy how time flies. But
Yes.
running your company, going
Hmm.
and doing your speaking engagements, being a wife, being a mother, what is something that you would say you do consistently that helps you
Hmm.
stay more present and able to be
Yeah.
the version of you want to be?
Yeah. Ooh, consistently.
Well,
That's always the tricky
you can
part,
give me
right?
a
We go in and out.
couple
Yeah.
examples if you want. Yeah.
Yeah. I think right now my biggest focus, and I just phrase it this way because it makes it sound more fun to me. It's microdosing mindfulness. So it's being
Oh.
more intentional throughout the day to say, ooh, I'm going to check in. Like, how am I doing? Where am I?
Hmm.
What's really happening? My husband has this wonderful phrase, be with what you can see. And it's a
Oh.
great like grounder. Like, okay, am I on my phone and listening to my kid and letting the dog out? Wait, what's really happening? Can I get grounded? What's going on in my body? What's going on in my system? What parts of me are activated? And can I just really be present right now in this moment? And what's most important? Hearing the story about the day, right, from my
Hmm.
kiddo. Being in nature. I'm going to take a walk in the backyard with the pups. Um, and trying to build that in more regularly throughout my day. Pauses. Ev- Every time I walk down the hallway outside my office to use the restroom, like it's a regrounding. I'm like, okay, where
Hmm.
am I? What am I doing? What's now? And that I feel has kept me more in tune to more moments versus what I typically used to do was like save everything to the end of the day. Kiddos in
Hmm.
bed, like everything's taken care of. I can now take care of me. And while that worked well, given the way that my life was during certain times, it also didn't always sustain me throughout the day. Like I couldn't wait for that moment. And I'm like, why am I waiting till like 8:30 to take care of me, to
Yeah.
check in with what's going on in my system? I can do this more regularly throughout the day.
Hmm.
And in fact, I want to. I want to have that reset of, when my kid's trying to show and tell me something, I'm like, oh, you're right. This is none of this. I don't need any of this. I just need eye contact with this
Hmm.
kiddo. I need to be in tune. I want to live my life. I want to
Yeah.
be in my life. When I'm at work, I want to be with my clients. When I'm at home, I want to be with my family.
Yeah.
And so much of that is just my practice of understanding, like, am I present? Where am I really? Am I with what I can see?
Hmm. That's cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Be with what you can see. That's really
Mm-hmm.
helpful
Yeah.
because I think a lot of us, this is why we don't follow through with
Right.
our mindfulness practices and
Yes.
that's why a lot of people do it first thing in the morning because they
Yes.
know they're not going to take care of themselves at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing left in the tank.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, I could keep talking to you forever.
I
We're going to have to
know.
just do more conversations, I think.
Yes.
Thank you so much for taking your time to
Yes.
be with us today.
Thank you for having me on.
You're
Yeah, I
welcome.
could chat with you forever. So,
I know so many things. So, you guys, if you're interested, if you want to follow Amber, she does share really good content. We're going to
Thanks.
link her things below, and then her company website we'll put there too if you want to find out anything about her.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. And as always, guys, if you enjoyed this conversation and you would like to share it with someone, that helps us so much. So please hit that share button wherever you're watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Ask a question. We'll get back to you. And if you have not yet left a review, that does help the show. So thank you so much for that. And until next time, we'll see you later. Thank you for listening to Operation B, the podcast. To support this message and to support the show, please make sure that you like, follow, and share the podcasts wherever you enjoy listening. And be sure to leave us a review on iTunes. Thank you for being here and see you next time.